Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with comics creator Robert Jeffrey. You might know Robert's work in books like Shinga and the Jade Obelisk, Round 3, Green Lantern, and the currently funding and ongoing Epiphany Engine. Robert, thank you for jumping in and joining.
Thank you. I was going to say thanks for having me. This is always cool to be invited, so thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for saying yes. Thanks for joining for a talk. And glad to be talking about the projects that you're working on, as well as the things that are part of your creative past. So, curious about what connected you with comics.
Love of reading, you know,
Yeah.
um, I always tell the story that when I was back in, I think, elementary school, they would have us walk single file from classroom to classroom or to recess. I would always have my nose in a book. Um,
Hmm.
and I had counted the steps so well so I could read and not walk into a wall. So it it, my love of comics or my move into reading comics came out of a love of just reading. Um and growing, in addition to the reading and love of sci-fi, fantasy, definitely, but science fiction was kind of the genre that kind of captured me. So I saw a lot more of that genre reflected in comics. So it's just a combination of reading and loving science fiction.
Yeah, cool, cool. Were there any particular authors or books that you remember kind of first captured you as a reader?
Yeah, the obligatory answer, The Amazing Spider-Man.
Hmm.
So I'm an 80s baby, to date myself. And I was reading Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, probably early 90s.
Yeah.
So it was, so that was huge. Bigger than that for me was X-Men. X-Men, the Jim Lee Claremont era, where the art was just popping on every page, and they were playing volleyball every couple of issues or basketball, and um, but the action and the storytelling were just epic. Claremont had a history with X-Men going back to the 70s, and Jim Lee was like one of those superstar artists. So like pairing them together in that book was huge. It was
Yeah.
huge for me, and I think those were two on the Marvel side, but on the DC side of things, Milestone.
Mm-hmm.
Milestone Comics. I people will always like cite books like Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns as those like seminal works that got them like, I want to create comic books. I'm just being real that those weren't it for me. If those
Yeah.
Milestone were those books. Milestone were, in addition to telling great superhero stories, it reflected the world that I saw around me on like the south side of Chicago or just
Hmm.
throughout Chicago. And that representation on the page, and behind the pages, with the creative crews and the editorial and just everybody that worked at Milestone, that was huge for, I always say, a young Black kid wanting to write just in general, but seeing these books created by somebody that looked like me was huge for me. And the stories spoke to me in a way that I don't think I'd ever experienced before. I say that as like as a child, I was just like devouring books, like I was, I had a big history. But of the comics that I have read to that point, the Milestone ones were the ones that stuck with me and helped me to realize that um, this could be something that I could possibly do. Or having that example. So those are the big titles that were, huge for me, in addition to like animated series that like Batman the Animated Series and
Hmm.
X-Men. Not so much Spider-Man. I know people are going to get on my case for that, but as far as for like the storytelling, definitely Batman the Animated Series was huge. Because Art Deco, 1940s style, you know, serious, like heartfelt storytelling. So, all of that wrapped in together with Milestone being at the top, those were huge influences for me.
Yeah, I love that. I was also a fan of many of the things that you mentioned, and I was just at a comic shop yesterday, and it was one of those moments of like, welcome back to a few decades ago because I saw like a milestone issue, a reissue or a new take with hardware, and so
Yeah.
it's good time in comics.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It was a beautiful time. That's Image was on the rise. Yeah, it was like the early days. I don't even say the early days because I think Black indie comics have been doing their thing before that. But you have to because and that was something I came to later on, but realized that it was around that time. You know, you had Brother Man, Larry Stroman, Todd Johnson, with their series, and I'm having a brain freeze. Doing their work and just indie comics in general. It just seemed like people were realizing at that point, like we can, do some creative stuff on our own, which was pretty huge.
Yeah, yeah. Now you've gotten to be in creator-owned spaces as well as spaces like Green Lantern. Curious about what comics have allowed you to do and explore in stories.
They've allowed me to have fun,
Yeah.
just like, have fun, um, genre hop in a way that I love I love as a fan of like this geek stuff.
Mhm.
I say that science fiction and space operas are like my huge, those are the ones that I gravitate to as far as, as a particular genre, but I love a little bit of everything. So, with writing, I've been blessed to have the opportunity to not just write one thing, you
Yeah.
know, and the comics is, I think, with it primarily being a visual medium, um, I feel that if I just did one thing, I would be limiting myself with not taking full grasp, of the visual medium. So, I remember I had one friend, a writer, John McGuire, a talented dude, and I think he was writing a scene or something. He tells the story better, but he was writing a steampunk adventure with a little bit of romance, which is pretty cool. But um, he was asking, he was like, there's a part where I want to put some flying carpets in. Robert, should I do? I was like, yes, you better do that. It's
Mhm.
just have the artist draw the hell out of those like flying carpets. But um it so to answer your question, creating comics allows me to kind of play within these different genres and these different worlds, which I love. On the creator owned side of things, on the doing client work within the indie space, doing client work within, you know, the mainstream with like something like DC Comics. That's just something I personally pride myself on doing because
Mhm.
um, it makes me I feel a better draw, for potential clients because they
Mhm.
know that I can just kind of be flexible. So yeah, it's something I definitely do feel that comics has allowed me to do or allow me to kind of play around in.
Yeah. Any best collaborations or experiences that stand out so far?
So for one of the titles you mentioned, Route 3,
Hmm.
it's my creator owned series, but the series artist on that is uh I call him one of my creative brothers from another mother, Sean Hill, Sean Damien Hill.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Route 3 was one of the titles that he broke into the industry with and or one of the titles. And the work that we did on that book shines because Sean is the artist. And we hit this kind of easy gate when it comes to creating where he understands me, I understand him, like what his strengths are, how to write to that, to be open to asking questions, like, what don't you like, what works, and getting receiving that feedback, on the script and on the art. um it's been a chill process.
Hmm.
He's definitely been number one, kind of, he's a number one example of that. Um, in addition to that, another artist I worked on, Matteo Illuminati. He's a series artist on Changa and the Jade Obelisk. Matteo is my Italian brother from another mother. We worked on a few projects together, and also go back before I forget, going back to Sean. Now Sean is like big time Marvel, DC. He's
Hmm.
like, they saw his talent and they're just like, we gotta give this brother as much work as possible. So I can say I knew him when, and I still know him now. So he's a really cool guy. He's one of the artists on Epiphany Engine. Matteo is the same way. He's open to um, taking suggestions. He he's laid back. He's one of the most laid back dudes that I've worked with, and in this industry, it helps to not be high strung. Because I
Hmm.
admit that I am, at times, but Mateo is chill. And once again, as with Sean, um, it leads to like easy and fruitful collaborations, I feel. Once again, another guy that's, talented as heck, and I and draws actually action really well. I'm actually looking at a piece of art right now on one of my screens where it's like this, Mateo's killing it as usual. But those are like, I would say those are two examples of like very like positive and just good collaborations that have worked out, within my career.
Yeah, yeah. No, you mentioned Epiphany Engine there as well. And I've recently backed the project and really curious to
Thank
see
you,
how
man.
it turns out. Yeah, yeah. Um, and so it's this amazing convergence of all kinds of talent, and curious about what drew you in and what your involvement's been with Epiphany Engine.
Yeah, so it was one of the writers. I'm working on it as one of this, I guess, series writers or graphic novel writers. And Tony had, I think Tony Cottrell reached out and asked about my interest, and I joined on as like you said, as one of the writers. It's been um a really it's been a new experience because I don't think I've been a part of something that's been this huge, that's been this big.
Hmm.
One of the things I've talked about, I've spoken about this on another podcast, where I this reminds me of like all of those summer events that you would go into the comic book shop to read, like the crossover events where they were like, we got to get the kids money. They're out of work. They're out of school. They're out of
Hmm.
school. So,
Hmm.
as if they were working in factories or whatever. But no, they and it would just be this big crossover that there would be many times where the action would be cool, where the story would be lacking. You but then there are those crossovers like Crisis, which are huge and which kind of are impactful and mean something. With this Epiphany Engine is the that side of like the crossover,
Hmm.
equation or whatever. It is heartfelt. There's this theme of family, um, sacrifice, I feel, paired with bringing in all of these characters from all of these different books from different publishers into like this massive world spanning event. And it's black, black creators, black. And one of the things that I see when it comes to like when it would come to crossovers, is that characters of color, no matter what, community, they're often sidekicks or support. It just is what it is. And which is, and for me, it's unfortunate. But at this one, it's like we don't have that.
Hmm.
We don't have that. And I think that the talent, and also, so that's on the page, but behind the scenes, we have talent like out of this world, from the on the writing, with the art, pencils, inks, lettering, editorial, the characters that are, from the different creators themselves that have donated their characters to the cause. Um, that's that's a beautiful thing. So it's something that I think that if you are just a fan of great stories and love those big event, those big comic book events, I tell people like please support. One of the things that I always hear, in various like the blurred communities and comic books is like we don't see ourselves reflected in these large stories, or if we do, we are not kind of front and center,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
leading the charge or helping to whatever. So this is like our response to say we're giving you this, this is what you've been asking for, and it's good. It's good, as far as what I've personally contributed, is a chapter, so I guess an issue that focuses on one of the members of the family, that's at the center of this, the Macaulay family. So without giving specific details, yeah, mine's just like just a regular comic book issue. And um I was I was excited. I mean, I was happy with the work that I submitted and turned in, to the client. But yeah, that's Epiphany Engine kind of in a nutshell. There's a general summary. There is the Macaulay family teams up with heroes and heroines from different universes to combat a an antagonist. His name is Absalom. Absalom. I think I've been mispronouncing that for a while, but Absalom. And that's the basic. That's a basic summary without going too far in depth. But action packed. If you love science fiction, story, graphic novel for fans of that, and just people who love good stories. So that's
Nice.
yeah, it's been cool. I mean, it's been cool, and as I mentioned before, I don't like just doing one thing. So this
Hmm.
is something where it's like kind of a hodgepodge of all the things that I love, like science fiction, multiversal storytelling. So
Cool, very cool. You mentioned Route 3 and current
mhm.
work. So anything that you'd like to mention as far as the next steps in your creator and work and anything else?
Yeah, so there, I done a bit of video game writing for a studio named a bit of writing for video games for a developer named Blowfish Studios. They're based in Australia, and the only game that has been released of I think it's like four or five that I worked on is a game called Phantom Galaxies. And if you have, I think it's on Steam and Epic. Um, if you're a PC gamer, if you love space opera that focuses on mecha, action, like Gundam and all that, download that game because it features writing by yours truly.
Hmm. Hmm.
In addition to that, um, there was a anime short which was there's going to be a series, but the first episode was released on the Phantom Galaxy's YouTube page, which is a script co-written by me. So there's a 7-minute anime short um, co-written by me that takes place in the Phantom Galaxy universe, and over the next couple of weeks, the second episode, which I also co-wrote, should be released on their YouTube channel. So outside of the comic book stuff, but within the world of comic books, Epiphany Engine, definitely. I'm writing a comic book for a nonprofit organization called Steam Superheroes,
Hmm.
which will focus on a group of um, scientists in a variety of different fields coming together to use their talents to save the day. So that's essentially it. But I've been that was announced. I'm the writer on that, and the artist is Ben Herrera. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, but he's done work for Marvel Comics. Talented writer. I mean, talented artist, and um, continuing to do work with 133 Art on One Nation. One Nation actually issue number 5 that was released this year. So I'm going to actually have copies of that, which is cool. Which I'll be selling at a show at an appearance in a couple of weeks. And then also we recently released the third issue of Changa and the Jade Obelisk. So as far as like things that are immediate, those are that you can actually buy and watch, or support. Those are the ones. Right now, there are a few things that are in production. Um, and if things go according to plan, 2025 will be a big year next year, with some of the stuff I have coming up, uh, and working on some creator owned stuff too. So, but yeah, it's kind of where things are at. I was trying to think of if I had forgotten anything, but yeah, that's um those are the current things, current projects.
Cool, cool. Well, any particular spaces, either online or convention spaces or anything like that, where people can connect and follow along and learn more?
Yeah. So my website is www.robertkjeffrey, jeffrey.com. That's www.robertkjeffrey.com. Facebook is, I is a good place. So I would suggest searching for author Robert Jeffrey II. And Instagram seems to be like the only other place I actually actively post. I think that's Robert K. Jeffrey. So Robert K. Jeffrey. Outside of that, no, I don't do TikTok. I don't do the dancing. I mean, like I'll post on TikTok, but yeah, social media is, definitely something I'm still trying to, do better with. As far as appearances, I do have, if you're anybody watching this is in the Atlanta area, or hey, if you want to fly from out of town to to visit me, I hope you would do more in the city aside from coming to a signing. But I'm gonna have a signing at a local shop down here called Challenges Games and Comics
Cool.
on July 27th. And that's, yeah, Challenges, Games, and Comics. Yeah, July 27th. And I'll be there from 12 to 5. And I'll have copies of that One Nation issue 5 and Changa and the Jade Obelisk issue 3. The Glyph Comics Award winning Changa and the Jade Obelisk. And nothing else right now. I'll be floating around at Dragon Con. I got tickets as a fan, so they'll have a table. But anything else that I'll have coming up, definitely just watch out for on Instagram or Facebook. But that'll be the next show that I do, or the next appearance that I have.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, Robert, thank you for the time, the
Yeah,
creating and the conversation, and glad to have you back anytime to talk about projects.
awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep, thank you.